Good evening, everybody. How are we all doing tonight? So, we've got a 17-year-old and three Democrats walk into a bar. Which one comes out? Just kidding. Just kidding. Okay, so we're going to be opening tonight with a segment on Kyle Rittenhouse, which I really would like to not have to talk about anymore. But before we do that, I want to introduce my hosts. Uh, Again, as always, we have my lovely fiance Kota. Say hello, Kota.
Hello, everyone.
I think she's tired.
I
I
am
am
very
too.
tired.
I am too. It's completely understandable. We've been going at full steam for a long fucking time, and it's just
The heat doesn't help either.
no, it doesn't. Uh, and then we have our resident Soviet Kanakistani, Dael. Say hello, Dael.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am coming to you live from the great city of Montreal in the truly, truly awful country of Canada. And welcome to the show.
Kanakistan. It's not Canada, it's Kanakistan.
Soviet Kazakhstan, to be specific.
Precisely. And on that note, I want everyone to wish our host, Dale, a happy marriage. How was the wedding?
It was rather standard, to be honest. This was just getting the legal proceedings done, signing
Yeah,
the
I know,
documents and
but
such.
I
Yeah.
kind of figured you'd at least take a day and quote unquote bump uglies for a while.
Well, we
What's
have.
that?
Oh, you've never heard that term?
No, it's a joke that Erica gets.
Oh, fair enough. But yeah, we're probably gonna do that more traditional thing at a bit of a later date.
No consummation. What?
And that never said that. Never said that. And just they're gonna do the whole like ceremony thing a bit at a later date.
Okay, well, regardless, uh congratulations on your future US citizenship. I am happy for you.
Thank you.
I'm really hoping we get your finances under control so that we can get you down here.
Agreed.
But before we go over your finances, because 2 weeks ago we had actually done a deep dive on you, and apparently you weren't making nearly as much as you thought you were.
Indeed.
Uh, so that's something that will eventually need to be addressed, is the income. But for now, we've got a plan for you.
Yep.
So before we get to all that, and before we truly get into the 2A issues at hand, I want to I need to pull this up because I am wholly unprepared, because I am just a piece of crap right now. So, let's get this up on the screen for the viewers. And Vitter. Andrew Wortman. Who the heck is Andrew Wortman?
No
Let's
idea.
see. He is a resident of Warwick, Rhode Island. Quote unquote pro democracy, gay AF, one of the top 900 most influential accounts on Twitter. Trump and the GOP are criminal enterprise. Black Lives Matter, expand the court. So
He's one of these crazy people.
this is typical authoritarian lefties. These are people that belong in Canada.
Unfortunately true. Just before we get into that, I just wanted to note that we currently can't see anything on the screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's
No
my
worries.
fault because I forgot to turn on the camera for you. Let's see, OBS virtual camera. It's on and there. Okay.
Excellent. Now we see it.
So I'll go back to this. This is Andrew Wortman. He is a piece of crap, as are most lefty authoritarians. Actually, all lefty authoritarians are pieces of crap. They all
Agreed.
belong in Canada.
Sadly true.
This is a tweet I responded to. The benefactor of the estate of Joseph Rosenbaum, the first man killed by Kyle Rittenhouse when he crossed state lines with a quote-unquote assault weapon to defend himself against peaceful protesters, is suing him and the entire Kenosha, Wisconsin Police Department for civil damages. Good. No. No. Stop. You're wrong. Kyle Rittenhouse did not cross state lines with a quote-unquote assault weapon. He didn't cross state lines with a rifle. He didn't cross state lines with a weapon, period. The weapon was already in Wisconsin. It never left Wisconsin. So there's number one with your argument, Andrew, and this has been proven wrong time and time again. Let's see. He says that Kyle claimed, or that the story is that Kyle crossed state lines to defend himself against peaceful protesters. Well, one, the peaceful protests took place during the day, not at night. And Kyle
Yes,
didn't.
it's hard to peacefully protest and burn down car lots at the same time.
Yes, it is. Which is why the riots took place at night and the peaceful protests took place during the day. Although the people that they were protesting on behalf of were still pieces of shit.
Agreed.
But he didn't even go there to quote unquote defend himself. He didn't go there to be part of a protest or anything. He went there the morning of to clean up damage from the riots the night before. And what's interesting about all of this is I was only about 4 or 5 blocks away from where this all took place that night. I drove into Kenosha, Wisconsin that night, and I was sleeping in the truck. Coda was sleeping right next to me in the truck. We were just waiting to deliver. We were there. I didn't see it. I didn't take part in it. I didn't even hear it. I was dead asleep. But during the Rittenhouse trial, the facts came out. He didn't cross state lines with the weapon. His intent to be in Kenosha wasn't to attend the protest or attend a riot. His intent was to clean up damage from the riots the night before. And a lot of people were like, well, he's from the Chicagoland area, so he doesn't belong there. The Chicagoland area is fucking huge, one. And two, Kenosha is right across the border from the Chicagoland area. Three, he has family in the Kenosha area and throughout the Chicagoland area. So that's a bullshit excuse.
Yes. What exactly is the Chicagoland area? Is that just the area around Chicago?
Chicagoland area is the entire area around Chicago. So let's take a look at a map. Okay, so I don't know if you can see it in the picture,
Yeah.
but there's that red dotted area around Chicago.
Yep.
That is Chicago.
Mhm.
But the Chicagoland area extends out much further than that. So there's let's see, there's Interstate 80 down here. The Chicagoland area extends out from this red area all the way to Joliet. And if you go north of Joliet and follow, let's see. So you see Aurora.
Yep.
So this huge area around Chicago, pretty much from from Interstate 80 to Highway 30, and then north of that into Aurora. Let's see. So into Aurora, which is right here. So into Aurora. And then you kind of trace it back a little bit. So north of Aurora is Carroll Stream. Let's see if I can. So right where my cursor is Carroll Stream.
Mhm.
So to the left of Carroll Stream is Highway 59. You just kind of follow that north. And these are all Chicagoland areas. Buffalo Grove, Highland Park. Highland Park was also in the news last year. Or was it this year?
Did something happen at Highland Park?
Yeah, there was a shooting at Highland Park.
Huh.
It must have been last year because that's what sparked the PICO or PICA, the Protect Illinois Communities Act.
Mhm. I would assume another piece of gun control nonsense.
It is another piece of gun control nonsense. So, let's see. So there's Highland Park. Here's Buffalo Grove. And if you just keep going north, the area that Chicagoland encompasses goes all the way up to Antioch. Right there. And it basically stops there. And right there is the cutoff for Wisconsin. Wisconsin is quite literally right there, north of Antioch. You go east a little bit, and you take Highway 137 right here, north. Oh, and there's
Hey,
Kenosha.
what is that town?
There's Kenosha. I mean,
Yep.
let's see, Highway 94, this exit right here. This exit right here has a no, it's not that one. It's this one. There's a TA Travel Center, a truck stop. I've stopped there. I've stopped at the Love's Travel Stop. I know this area intimately, and I know how to get to Kenosha because I've even roller skated at one of the rinks that's in Kenosha. Kenosha, just right fucking there, sitting right on the lake. So this whole thing of he crossed state lines, it's not like he drove 500 miles. It's not even like he drove 100 miles. He didn't even drive 50 miles. From Antioch to Kenosha?
Not that long of a drive. Probably like, isn't it like half an hour, 45 minutes? Oh, 33 minutes
21.1
exactly.
miles. 21.1 miles.
Not that far.
No. And Antioch is, I believe Antioch is where they say he was living. That's Chicagoland area. I'm personally most acquainted with the Buffalo Grove and Des Plaines area. But even then, I've driven this area. This area is well traveled, and Interstate 94 is a pain in the butt.
Due to traffic or just general conditions of the road?
Traffic and general conditions of the road. Okay, so Andrew says that Kyle is being sued for civil damages. It's not just civil damages. It's what's called a wrongful death lawsuit. And because it's a civil court instead of a criminal court, there is a lower expectation of proof. It's not guilty beyond reasonable doubt. It's just...
Isn't the standard more likely than not?
Yes, more likely than not. So in a case like this, the big thing you have to do is at least prove that the person didn't deserve to die. In a wrongful death lawsuit, you pretty much have to prove that the person didn't deserve to die. Which is going to be immensely difficult, not only because you've got Rosenbaum's entire criminal history to contend with, but you also have an entire criminal case revolving around the first shots that Kyle Rittenhouse shot into Rosenbaum, and a jury that said he was protecting himself. You're going to have a hard time contending with a ruling like that. And the only way to do so is to get the judge to throw out the previous the court is to get the judge to throw out the court's ruling as evidence. Not
that a
Go ahead.
easy? Is that an easy thing to do, or is that
No?
Do you think that's like an?
No, it's not going to be an easy thing to do at all, because it is public record. You really just, you can't throw out public record. It's not illegitimate. It's not illegitimately obtained. That's one of the only things that would get a civil proof or evidence in a civil proceeding thrown out, is if the evidence was illegitimately obtained. But it's court record. You can't illegitimately obtain court record.
Right.
especially after after Kyle had already turned 18 and was on trial. If they had gotten him through the system, tried and convicted or acquitted before his 18th birthday, it'd be a completely different story.
All right. Does a civil case still require unanimous jury decisions, or is it more lenient on the jury decision as well?
That I'm not certain of. I'm most well versed on criminal.
Mm-hmm.
And for just for criminal court, things are stressful. It's even more in depth when it comes to civil procedure, simply because there's going to be motions back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and this can go on for years.
Hmm.
Because it's not the state that's suing or charging someone with a crime. It's one person saying another person did something, and now they want that person to pay them for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a bunch of motions saying, or there's going to be a bunch of motions saying we want this in evidence, we want this in evidence, we want this in evidence from both sides, and both sides are going to say we don't think this is legitimate to be used as evidence. We don't think this is legitimate to be used as evidence. And it's just going to go back and forth. And this can be a years-long issue. And it's been a solid 2 years and 2 months since Kyle was acquitted. He's living down in Texas now. He's trying to move on with his life. And people are still pulling this bullshit.
Yep.
I mean, have you seen what he looks like now?
I have not. He looks. Does he look substantially different?
Let me see if I can pull up a recent picture.
Last time I saw him was when he was making his first rounds on the podcast circuit, going to the various shows and such. But that's been almost a year now, I think, since he did that.
Let's see. I'm still looking for the pictures. From what I've seen, I believe Kyle has gotten a bit pudgier.
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain he's packed on some weight.
Yeah, I remember he had done so when I last saw him on the various podcasts.
And I'm certain that Kyle has struggled with his weight for most of his life, but if he has in fact gained weight, I can't find a recent picture. If he has in fact gained weight, or even if he's lost weight, I would generally attribute that to the issues that most of us go through when we take a life.
Mm-hmm.
It is not an easy thing to go through at all. It is not an easy thing to deal with, and with how we've basically criminalized being a firearms owner and getting mental health assistance. It's something that a lot of us struggle with.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have ever wished that Kyle would have to take life. That is something that sucks beyond all compare.
Mm-hmm. And then to have to go through that trial afterwards as well just makes it even worse.
Yeah, it does.
And I guess the various death threats and so forth that he's received since then also don't help.
Yeah. Okay, so because we are on shooting and all that good stuff, we've got some 2A things going on right now. Let me pull up the gorgeous meme tweet. And I mean, this is gorgeous. This is a beautiful meme. It has been memed beyond all compare in the past week. Let's see. Let's pull this up for everyone. Victor Giancario F. Banner. I hurt your nerve. Sorry for that. I am a trained sniper, military style, and as a sniper, I can disassemble and assemble a SIG in 38 seconds. Sir, what kind of SIG? Because there's not only one SIG. I mean, you've got over a century of Sig Sauer making weapons. The most recent being the military service rifles, which I'm not going to get into why they suck. But
if you want to know why they suck, watch previous episodes of this show.
Yes, watch previous episodes of this show. The new service rifle sucks, and not because it doesn't operate. It operates just fine. The reason it sucks is because we're in a different type of combat. Not useful. Not whatsoever. But, the question is, what kind of SIG? Is it the new service rifle? Is it a SIG P320? Is it a SIG P226? SIG P365? What is it? Well, I found out what he says it was. The Sig Sauer 510. Also known as the Sturmgewehr 57. It is a 7.5 millimeter SIG, which is select fire between semi-automatic and full auto, that was used by the Swiss Army. So this guy isn't even a U.S. citizen. Probably Swiss. But I don't believe that he actually knows how this thing operates. I don't think he's actually a sniper, because no self-respecting sniper is going to use a select fire weapon as a rifle, as a sniper rifle. Ever. Some will use a semi-automatic, but the preferred sniper rifle is going to be bolt action and suppressed.
Is it for the same reason you would not use a select fire sniper as the same reason why you would not use a semi-auto?
Yes and no. There are a few added concerns with using full auto. So the main concern when you're using a semi-automatic weapon as a sniper rifle is you've got gases exiting from two parts of the rifle. You've got them exiting from the barrel behind the bullet, and you've got them exiting from the chamber as the action cycles. Well, using a full automatic, you are now expelling a lot more gas, and because you are expelling gas, you can't actually see if someone has taken notice of your position. The moment that you stop firing, there's a good chance you're going to get put down. It's more of a risk to be firing full auto than it is to be firing semi-auto, and it's more of a risk to fire semi-auto than it is to fire single action rifles.
I'm curious. What is the standard procedure for once you've discovered where a sniper is firing? Do you just like approach them, or is there some other procedures generally taken out?
Generally you've got snipers, and then you've got counter snipers, which are snipers that kill other snipers.
Right.
And the way it works is you've got your sniper's nest, and the other side has their sniper's nest, and you are going to shoot at your target and try not to be seen by the counter snipers. If a counter sniper makes you, they get one shot to put you down. If they don't, you need to move positions. If you find out where that counter sniper is and you fire at them, you've got one shot. And if you don't put them down, they move positions. Everyone's moving, and everyone's trying to be as undetectable as possible. It's very rare that as a sniper, people are going to try to flank you and, take you out face to face.
Is that generally a lot more dangerous to attempt?
It's not a lot more dangerous to attempt, but maneuvering anywhere outside of the sniper's vision after you've already been inside the sniper's vision, it's not going to end well for you, because he knows you're flanking him. He's going to take the first shot he can.
Right.
I mean, we've talked about Simahaya.
Yep.
And that man took out battalions worth of men. And he was just using an old service rifle from the early 1900s.
Yep.
You don't screw with people that are just good. But this guy right here, the one that we're talking about, complete idiot. Absolute idiot.
Agreed.
Let's see. I know I've got other stuff in here. Oh, and here's where I say he is truly an idiot. So, I'm friends with Butters here.
Mhm.
He says, to be fair, the M4 is an AR-15, though civilian AR-15s aren't assault rifles. Assault rifles should be legal, however. I said, yeah, but conversions of arguments are an important skill to have, i.e., all M4s are M15 platform rifles, but not all AR platform rifles are M4s. Given the statistics surrounding the AR platforms, a shot in the dark that it's not an M4 will almost always be correct. This guy thinks I'm on his side at the moment. But I'm not. He says, correct. One part is the technical composability of a weapon. That's not even a fucking word. intended for armies, law enforcement, etc. The other part is the civil section. Too many dead Americans, independent of the technicality of a weapon. Civilians don't need and should not own assault weapons. That's a bunch of jibber jabber. That's a bunch of gobbledygook. It means absolutely nothing. Nothing in what he said is relevant or even coherent. But along the way, someone says no military weapon has ever been used by a civilian in a crime in this country. Well, that's not true. We've had military registered firearms used in crimes, but it's very rare, and when it happens, it's done by the military most of the time.
Yeah. Usually it's like someone shooting up their own base.
But here's where the true bullshit starts. He says automatic or self-loading weapons. He is now conflating automatic weapons with auto-loading weapons.
The fuck?
So, an auto-loading weapon is a firearm in which, when you pull the trigger, what happens is the action cycles as the bullet is expelled from the barrel. And when the action cycles, it expels the cartridge from the chamber, and as the action cycles back forward to close the chamber, it inserts a new round into the chamber. This is what's called auto-loading. Both semi-automatic weapons and full auto weapons are auto-loading. So he says automatic or self-loading weapons are regulated and hard to get. The AR-15 can be bought legally. In some places, you don't even need an ID. It doesn't matter if you hold the trigger or pull the trigger for each shot. Both are assault weapons. No, 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 you frickin' idiot. This is not how this works. It's not how any of this works. And the person he's replying to replies back and says the AR-15 is not a military weapon, nor is it used by the military. It is a semi-automatic rifle, no different functionally than any other semi-automatic rifle. And here's just the cherry on top. Although it was built for military purpose, by removing the self-loading options, Colt sold it as a hunting toy. But by installing a sear, illegal, you convert it into a military-grade assault rifle.
I don't think Colt ever made an AR-15 removed their self-loading options.
No.
Did they?
No, they didn't. They didn't remove self-loading. It's all auto-loading. And on top of that, every firearm in the history of mankind, whether it... I'm getting pissed off. I'm getting pissed off because every single weapon, every modern firearm, since the creation of the musket until now, every single one of them has a sear.
What is a sear?
So a sear is a surface. So you take your hands. Take your hands, face both palms towards your chest, and put one palm on top of the other hand. Now, as your hands move in opposite directions, so your left hand moves left, your right hand moves right, the hand that's closest to you is pushing away from you. And what happens is at some point you've got a ledge. And at some point, using that force from from the hand that's pushing forward, your hand slips. The
Right.
hand that wasn't moving is what's called a sear surface.
Hmm.
It is a surface in which it holds back the forces of something that's trying to escape its containment. But eventually, that force is going to overcome and release. Every firearm has that type of mechanism. The trigger uses sear surfaces, and as you apply more and more pressure, at some point, the unmoving object cannot contain the force that you're putting on it any longer, and so the trigger will actually release the force that you've put on it, and it will begin the cycle of firing. So in, say, my Glock, I pull the trigger, the sear surface breaks, it releases the firing pin flies forward, it strikes the primer on the cartridge. Now the primer on the cartridge releases a gel, which reacts with the gunpowder in the cartridge, creates gases, expels the bullet. The gases cause the cartridge to expand while it's expelling the bullet. Once the bullet has been expelled, the gases back up, push the slide and the cartridge rearward. The slide has an ejection surface. So it's got the ejector and the extractor. The extractor is grabbing onto the rim of the cartridge. The ejector pushes the cartridge to the right and out of the chamber as the slide is moving back. Once the slide has fully cycled back and the cartridge has been ejected from the chamber, the slide moves forward. It has another sear surface pulling a bullet or a cartridge from the magazine and pushing it forward into the chamber. This is the cycle, generally, of a semi-automatic weapon, but it is also the cycle of automatic weapons.
What is the mechanically? What is the difference between the full auto and semi-auto? How does a full auto make it so that holding down the trigger just repeatedly fires?
So most semi-automatic weapons have what's called a trigger reset. And so when you pull the trigger, what'll happen is when you release the tension on the sear surface and the weapon cycles, there will be a mechanism that forces that sear surface back up and to make contact again. And your trigger will not be able to affect that without resetting the trigger into its original position to grab back onto the sear surface that it needs to pull away. Whereas with automatic weapons, that sear surface doesn't have a trigger reset. It has one sear surface, one mechanic. You pull the trigger, the sear surface goes down, the bolt releases its firing pin, strikes the primer, cycle just goes and goes and goes until you bring that sear surface back up by releasing the trigger.
I see.
Now this isn't always the case. You have the auto sear for the M16. You have open bolt weapons like the M250, or I think it's the 259, 249 Golf. I can't remember. It's the SAW, quad automated weapon that the Marine Corps uses.
All right.
That is an open bolt system. That uses what I described, where you pull the trigger, the sear releases, and it will not re-engage until you release the trigger. Whereas with the M16 has two different types of sear surfaces. It has your semi-automatic sear surface, and then it has your select fire sear surface. And select fire can be either full auto or 3-round burst. The mechanics for your select fire sear surface are a little bit different than the mechanics for just a normal open bolt system. And I'm not sure how exactly to explain them. There are videos on YouTube that do a great job of explaining that mechanic. Let's see. Me, when a European voices one of their stupid European opinions. You're not even a U.S. citizen yet. Stop it.
Yes.
You don't get to do that yet. You're still a dirty Frenchy Frenchman.
Fair enough.
This guy is just, he's a complete idiot. And you know, someone else says every single gun has a sear, and I'm like, yeah, even muskets have a sear, because muskets had sears. Every gun has a sear surface, every one of them. You can't be ambiguous when it comes to firearms, ever. Not once can you be ambiguous. Otherwise, we know you're lying. We know you're lying. Whether it's about knowing it or not, it doesn't matter. We know you're lying. You have an intent to deceive.
Yes.
Alright, so let's take a look again.
Was that your final interaction with this moron?
No, this went on for a long while. So I had previously encountered him. Let's see. So okay. He made the classic conflation. Seems like you don't like to hear about the senseless gun deaths in the US. Owning an assault weapon is not a right, and you will never stop me from speaking up for the victim. 1. Not an assault it's not an assault weapon. Semi-automatic weapons are not assault weapons. Point blank, period. It's the action that makes a weapon an assault weapon. Simply existing does not make a weapon an assault weapon.
Actually, I do have to stop you there briefly. It's
Yes.
not even assault weapon, it's assault rifle. Assault weapon is a made-up term. There is no actual gun classified in assault weapon.
Assault rifle is also a made-up term.
I mean, I'm pretty sure the assault rifle, assault weapon, it was just simmered down to, hey, I have a rifle in my hand. I'm going to assault you with it. Hey, I got a weapon in my hand. I'm going to assault you with it.
So assault rifle is also a contrived term?
Yes, but it's a contrived term directly from the U.S. Army.
I thought it just meant a gun that could fire both semi and full auto. But
which is the distinction that the U.S. Army made. But it's never actually been part of law. Assault rifle has never shown up in any laws ever passed by the U.S. Congress. ever. Select fire weapons, fully automatic weapons, semi-automatic weapons, single action weapons, those have showed up in one form or another. Assault rifle has never been adopted in any law. Assault weapon has never passed in any law. It is all made up, but the U.S. Army did in fact make the distinction, which is fine. But I think we all need to understand that it's still a made up term. Assault rifle is a made up term. So, do you want to take a crack at this one, Dael? I'll ask the question.
All right.
Show me the passage of the Second Amendment that protects AR-15s, AK-47s, and all of their variants.
Yes. It says the passage is well, I guess I could say the whole thing, or I could just say
just the second clause is what covers it.
Yeah, the second clause. Right? It's
the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Yes. An AK-47 and
is
an AR-15, whatever, they're armed. Right? Or firearms, technically, but they're all armed. A cannon is an arm. A musket is an arm. A saw, like, squad automatic weapon is an arm. They're all arms, and none of them shall be infringed.
A katana is an arm.
Yeah.
A Nichiren sword is an arm. A Bowie knife is an arm. A taser is an arm. Anything that can be used, anything that can be used in the moment as a weapon is an arm. Anything.
Yes.
I can turn my fucking phone into an arm.
Yes. I'm about to demonstrate what being armed is by taking my keyboard, arming myself with it, and beating Erica with it live on this podcast.
Why would you do that?
Just to prove your point. I'm helping you.
For the content.
Yeah, for the content. See, Dael gets it.
And this point is, I mean, it's so asinine when you realize that in the days of the founding fathers of the U.S., someone asked one of them, I can't remember which one it was, basically, hey, can I have a private armada of warships? You know what the answer was? Yes. A private armada of warships is covered by the Second Amendment. So if you think a modern firearm is too dangerous and the founders could never have conceived of it, you know how much damage you can do with a private armada of warships? If you just broadside an entire town with it? Far more than any full auto gun or any scary assault rifle or any of those things. They can't level a whole town.
The over here is saying someone else's arm is an arm.
Technically, yes.
So he just gets dumber and dumber and dumber. So U.S. Air Force Academy, Dad, show me the passage in the First Amendment that protects modern forms of communication, and where in the Fourth it says it applies to modern forms of search. I'll wait. The Second Amendment extends prima facie to all instruments that constitute bearable arms, including military service rifles. It says yes for regulated militias. Important detail, no. I thought not sure what you meant with First and Fourth. Okay, dimwit. Let's talk.
Do you know what a comma is?
Do you know what Black's Law Dictionary is? Because these people are still standing on the idea that regulated is separate from well. Well regulated back in 1791 meant to be proficient or well-trained
Or well maintained.
or well-maintained. The simple fact of the matter is the Second Amendment had nothing to do with militias. The First Amendment had nothing to do with the press. The First Amendment had nothing to do with had nothing to do with religion. It mentions these things. These groups are mentioned throughout the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, but it has nothing to do with them. It has to do with individuals that make up these groups and what the government can't do to those individuals. So, the right of the people to peaceably assemble, and this was another argument I had seen somewhere. They said, well, it's a group right. I said, yes, but it's a right of the people as a group to individually exercise. You can't force an entire group to do something, which means it is the job of the individual that's part of the group to take on that task. So, in the Second Amendment, you have a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. This follows along the entire thought of John Locke, understanding that we have groups and we have individuals that make up those groups. Groups are useful for certain things. So, the militia is a group. It is made up of individuals that are separate from government, and the militia itself is separate from government, though it can be appropriated by the government under certain conditions according to the Constitution. So, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. We've identified the group. We've identified the fact that it needs to be proficient, well-maintained, well-trained. We've got the group. We've got the reason for the group. It's the security of a free state. It's necessary to have a militia in order to keep security of a free state, which means it is necessary for us to have a group made up of individuals that is wholly separate from government to secure their community against all enemies, be it a domestic government or a foreign government. And then, only then, we understand from there's the comma, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The people of the group, which is everyone, because the militia is separate from the government. Everyone is part of the militia, point blank, period. Because the militia is separate from government, the people are separate from government. And because of this, anyone that could possibly make up the militia, which is everyone that isn't a government employee, we're all part of the militia, and it is our responsibility to take up arms, form a militia, and protect our communities from governments, be them domestic or foreign, that would dare tread on the rights of our communities. It is not a group right. It is a right of the individuals that make up the group. And this is what people don't understand. And it pisses me off. Let's see. Coda. I need his prosthetic leg. God knows I don't need the rest of him. Look at him. He's useless.
I mean, that was in correspondence to the an arm is an arm. I'm like, okay, well, if I'm gonna arm, if someone's gonna arm themselves with someone else's arm, can I get someone's leg? That way, I can really kick someone's ass and shove a foot up there.
Well, I mean, you can take Bud Roberts.
I'll go in like freaking Terminator Ariel, freaking with 2 legs swinging.
And for anyone that doesn't understand the reference, there's an old 90s show called Jag that revolves around the Navy Judge Advocate General's headquarters office in Falls Church, Virginia. And one of the characters' names is Bud Roberts, and he lost a leg in Iraq when he stepped on a landmine, and he walked with a prosthetic for the rest of the show.
Oh, so he lost it during the show. It wasn't like at the beginning of the show he had already only one leg.
I don't know if he actually lost the leg. All I know is the character lost the leg in Iraq.
Right. What I mean is, so the character lost, like the character during the show first had a leg in the show and then lost it, or
Yes.
he lost it before the show started, like before
the character Bud was fully no disability whatsoever at the start of the show. He was totally fine. He was all pieced together, no prior known injuries, nothing like that. He went out, did a service, boom, casualty.
Right.
So it was supposed to be a dire climactic phase of his, his character arc, because he had been such a, easygoing. Oh, I'm learning from the best, but I will have my time to shine. Oh, I fall in love with this beautiful woman. I make a family. Something bad had to happen to him.
Sure.
So they're like, you know what? Let's just chop off his leg.
Well, and here's the thing about that show. It was produced by Donald P. Basarius, which is the same guy that ran Quantum Leap. It's the same guy that ran NCIS. What else has he run? Let's check.
Was NCIS ever any good?
Yeah, it was actually very good. Let's see. He ran Quantum Leap, Jag, Airwolf, Magnum PI, NCIS. Those are the big ones. There's some other stuff that he made, but okay, it's not Belisarius, it's Belisario. His studio is Belisarius. And he works with a lot of the same actors. So Quantum Leap and Jag, he worked with Dean Stockwell. Dean Stockwell made appearances in both both shows. Very, very good actor. I love him. He was also in Battlestar Galactica.
Was Jag any good?
Yes, it was very good. Now, just because I like the shows doesn't mean I like actual JAG lawyers.
Fair point.
I don't trust officers, and I especially don't trust JAG officers. Which means I do not trust what's his face from Florida.
Who? DeSantis?
Yes, DeSantis. I don't trust him. I don't.
He
You can never get
he
me
was,
to trust him. Not gonna happen.
he was an officer.
Yeah, he was JAG.
Oh, he was JAG.
Which is why I keep
No,
saying on Twitter, I don't trust officers, and I especially don't trust JAG officers.
yeah. The only other person I know who was JAG is David French, and yeah, suitable person not to trust as well.
Uh, so I had gone back on topic. I said the operating clause, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed. The amendment recognizes that there needs to be armed groups separate from government that can operate without government instruction, and because those groups are needed, the right of the individuals that make up those groups shall not be infringed. And he says the right of the individuals in a regulated militia.
Did not say that.
Yeah. I said the militia isn't regulated in the way you're thinking. Well regulated, as it was understood when the amendment was written, means proficient. It says, oh yes it is. Take, for example, the National Guard. The National Guard isn't the militia. It never was the militia. It's just a branch of the army that they get to use in the U.S. That's it. But throughout my argument with this foreigner, I came to realize that he is using flat earther logic. And we've talked about this before. How do you prove to a flat earther that they're wrong without going into major scientific explanation? You point them to the sky and you say, why is it that every other celestial body in this universe is spherical, but only the Earth is flat? Same goes for the Second Amendment. Why is it that every other amendment in the Bill of Rights is a restriction on government, but the Second Amendment is a restriction on the people? Why? It's not.
Nope.
You cannot make an argument when you follow correct logical assumptions. If the Bill of Rights, if 9 of the 10 amendments of the Bill of Rights put limits on the government, then the other amendment, the Second Amendment, the one you're arguing about, was also a limit on the government.
Yep. But then he probably knows that and just doesn't want it to be the case.
Yeah.
My love,
Yes.
I have a hankering for a burger.
You has hankering for burger.
Uh-huh. I crave the all-beef burger patties.
Well, you're gonna have to wait until the morning.
Well, then, what do I do about this hankering for tonight? That's what I thought.
Give me a few minutes, we'll go to BK.
Oh!
So that
sorry, go ahead.
so that is something that I've been falling behind on, and that's actually something that we're going to catch up with Dael about. That's our next topic, is Dael's progress. So a couple weeks ago, we had a full audit of Dael's finances, and we found out that he doesn't make nearly as much as he thinks he does, or thought he did.
Correct.
And I put into context how dire his situation was. Just simply the fact that your rent is $2,250 a month is outrageous.
Agreed.
So, I wanted to catch up with you and see where we are in this. Have you talked to your landlord?
Yes.
Okay. What has your landlord said?
Basically no.
Basically, no. Okay.
Yes. Now, of course, I have not actually yet had the time to go through the various laws that dictate what, like, I will have to go through, because this isn't the first time, or this would not be the first time they've tried to get away with something they aren't actually able to get away with. Like, when I first moved in, they tried to charge me a fee for the keys, but in Quebec, it's illegal to charge a fee for any like for keys, for example, or anything like that. They can't do it. So I just never paid it, and they actually, the first month, they called me and were like, "Hey, you owe us $50 for the keys and you haven't paid it yet." And I said, "Oh, okay." And then I never paid it and never heard it back. Never heard back from them. So I'll have to look into all the laws relating to that stuff and see if this is just another example of them not actually following the law.
What I would like is if you could send me your lease. I'd like to take a look at it.
All right.
Okay, so we've at least gotten somewhere with landlord's a piece of crap.
Yeah.
That's fine. I get it. I get it. I know. Next, how are we doing on eating out?
A lot better. I did go eat out on Friday though, because I had there was a whole group outing, my team, so kind of bit the bullet and just went out with them. But other
Okay.
than that, I cut it back significantly.
Have you been packing lunch to take to work?
I've just been going without lunch.
You cannot continue to do that. And
And
no, you cannot continue to go without lunch. You need to be eating. When you change your diet drastically like that, it wreaks havoc on your body. If you were regularly eating lunch, you need to continue regularly eating lunch. You just need to stop buying food out. You need to take food with you. I told you to get a cooler or something, pack cold lunch.
all right.
And tomorrow morning, message me and tell me to sit down and send you those recipes because I've got two of them written up for you. One is for sandwich rolls, one is for pizza dough, and I will walk you through proportions, and you can use your stand mixer for the first time.
All right. That will be good. I do need to. I have it, so I do need to begin using it. One thing though, I am looking very forward to being able to do is making a shitload of baguettes. But apparently, those are a bit more difficult than just normal bread, so I'm gonna have to learn how to do that.
Well,
Will definitely
baguettes,
take.
it really depends on the consistency that you want from a baguette. It
Mhm.
depends on what consistency you want from any dough as to how you or what ingredients you are mixing in and
Yeah.
how you work with it. So
Uh,
I'm I'm guessing you're talking about a wetter dough.
yeah.
Okay. Wet
I
doughs
believe
are
it was 75%. Like it,
75% isn't difficult to work with. When it is still kind of a pain when you're first learning how to work with quote unquote wet doughs, but it's
Mhm.
not really that difficult to learn how to work with wet doughs. You just have to have wet hands.
Right. One question, because when I was reading recipes for how to make baguettes, it mentioned something I have not heard of. I'm wondering if A, if it's actually important, and B, just what this is. Do you know what a baking stone is?
Yes, don't get a baking stone.
What is a baking stone, and why would it be needed? Or
So
what is its purpose?
baking stones, or a baking steel is an object that goes into your oven, and you preheat your oven. And what happens is not only are you heating your oven, you're shoving all of that heat into a steel or a stone. And these objects transfer heat to what you're baking on them. And it's supposed to give you the ability to quickly create the object. So in a baking steel arena, say for instance a pizza, when you've got your pizza all stretched out and you've got your sauce and your cheese and your toppings all on there, you take your pizza peel, you stick it under the pizza, and you throw it on the pizza stone. The pizza stone rapidly transfers heat to that dough and will quickly create the crust and will start heating up all of the topping. And depending on the type of bread that you're making, your pizza steel should be in a different area of your oven, that sort of thing. Don't get a stone. Stones do not transfer heat as well as steels or irons.
Right. Can't you just use like a metal tray of some sort, like a steel tray, to do the same thing?
Well, trays are never going to come as steel.
Like aluminum, I guess.
But using a tray, you're going to warp the tray.
Oh.
Because it's a very thin piece of metal, and you don't want to warp that. What you want to do is you want to have heavy duty items that aren't going to warp under heat. So for instance, I have a pizza iron. It's a piece of cast iron specifically made for pizza. It's seasoned. I use it on a constant basis. I also have a Dutch oven, a cast iron Dutch oven. I also have a cast iron casserole pan, which can double as a Dutch oven.
Can you bake bread in a Dutch oven?
You are supposed to bake bread in a Dutch oven.
Oh, that's good, because I also have a cast iron Dutch oven.
And the idea of a Dutch oven is to keep steam in. So, say for instance, you're making sourdough, and you want it to really just expand and be big. What you do is, once you've formed the dough and it's fully proofed, you have the Dutch oven in the oven. It is at temperature, so 450, 475 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 250 Celsius.
Yeah.
Once it's up to temp, you open up the Dutch oven, you toss in a couple ice cubes, you throw in the dough, and you put the top back on, and you stick it in the oven for 20 to 30 minutes. This is just a loaf of sourdough. It depends on what you're making as to how long you have it covered and in the oven.
Right.
But you like
One thing I was kind of surprised to hear about was the need for like steam, which because the recipe I was reading, it basically says that you should take not like a bucket, like a plastic bucket, but you put like kind of like a bucket in the oven and you put a wet rag in the bucket, and apparently that controls the flow of steam so it doesn't evaporate too quickly. And um, yeah, it was
if if
unexpected.
if you have any electronics from or any type of oven from the US, so
Mhm,
GE, uh it almost doesn't matter. In the US and Canada, we all have the same fatal flaw with the ovens. It's not that they're
mhm.
convection, but they aren't sealed. So
Oh,
using steam in the oven isn't gonna do jack squat. You need a
mm,
Dutch oven.
right. That's unfortunate, but thankfully I have a Dutch oven now.
Um, what you should invest in, and I'll send you a link to this,
All right,
is that cast iron uh, casserole pan.
all right.
It is a Dutch oven for me. It's what I bake my rolls in,
Mhm.
and I I will send you the recipe for the rolls.
All right. And on that note as well, do you know if baking steels, as you said, with a better one, are they relatively affordable or are they rather expensive?
They can get expensive. There are, I mean, you can get a baking steel on Amazon. Let's see, Amazon and baking steel. So you can get a cheap baking steel for about $40.
Not bad.
It's not going to be very big. It's
Mhm.
13 and a half by 10 and a quarter.
Yeah,
Um,
I see what I'd want a long one if I was going to be making baguettes.
and it looks to be fairly thin. Um, so the thinner it is, the less heat it's going to transfer.
Mm,
I shouldn't say the less heat it's going to transfer. The less heat it's going to be able to hold and transfer quickly. It will
right.
always be transferring heat. Um, you want at least a 3/8 thick uh, piece of steel,
Mhm.
and when you get the cheaper ones, just know that they are not processed steel, so you are going to have to wash off machined oil or machining oil.
Mm.
You are going to have to season it, and
Mhm.
seasoning is a pain in the butt, but
So,
it can be done.
so I've often read, for example, you talk about seasoning, and that's mentioned a lot when people talk about like cast iron skillets and such. What exactly is the purpose of seasoning the metal?
So seasoning does what's called polymerization.
Hmm.
Um, so you've got nonstick pans in your kitchen, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, same idea. Polymerizing a piece of metal. What you're doing, well, the process of seasoning a piece of metal is twofold. It polymerizes the surface and it forces out any moisture that's in the metal because all of steel is ferrous.
Hmm.
It has little crevices between the grains that allows water in, and so it can rust. And oil does two things. It polymerizes and it displaces water. So by seasoning a steel, a pizza steel, or seasoning any piece of metal, using oil, you are pushing out any water that is in the metal, and at a certain temperature, which is the smoking point and higher for the oil that you're using, you are polymerizing the oil that you've put on the surface, and you are creating a non-stick surface. So, uh, I'm sure you've probably seen outdoor griddles, like
Yeah.
Blackstone griddles.
Mhm.
Those are sheets of metal of rolled metal, rolled steel, and when you get them, you need to season them. And so you see these guys turning on their griddles to like medium or even low, because even at low, most of these griddles get up to like 400 degrees, and the smoke point of some, and I mean some oils are right around 400 degrees, which is the smoke point. And as these guys season their griddles, the steel becomes black. That's not wear, that's not destroying the steel, that's polymerizing it. So when you buy these steels, you have to season them. You will always have to season them, but seasoning is less of a concern than using non-stick pans and pot. Those coatings can eventually come off and can lead to releasing dangerous chemicals into your food, which is why I've been transitioning all of our cooking implements away from non-stick to either full steel, iron, or stainless steel. Except for my pizza pans. My pizza pans are pretty much all aluminum.
And is it so? The process of seasoning, if I understand, is basically you just pour an oil on the metal and then heat it up until it's at its smoke point.
Well, you pour on a little bit of oil and you spread it out evenly across the surface. It needs to be a very thin layer. You need to have no excess on the surface. And then you heat it up beyond its smoke point. So, for instance, you would probably want something like olive oil at 250 degrees Celsius.
All right.
And you stick it in and you let it bake. And you let it bake. You let it bake for at least an hour after it's reached that 100 or that 250 Celsius point. Then you cool it down and you let it cool down completely. And then you do the process all over again. And ideally, it should have at least 3 coats of oil on the top. Now you can use other things because oil is fat, right? Okay, so you can use bacon fat. You can use beef fat. These are longer chain fatty acids. And they have higher smoke points, which actually means you're actually going to have things that aren't going to break down at higher temperatures. The longer...
So that's less ideal.
No, actually, it's more ideal. The longer the fatty acid chain that you have polymerizing the steel, the higher quality the polymerization you have. I just use olive oil. It's a medium medium length fatty acid.
Is it generally that the longer chain ones are the ones that have the higher smoke point?
Yes.
So in theory, because I have some really high smoke point oils that I use mostly for like searing steaks. Do you think maybe like avocado oil would be a good one since it has a super high
I
smoke point?
I know that there are a lot of people that use avocado oil, and I am
Hmm.
completely fine with you using avocado oil. My
Hmm.
only concern about it is it's not what I would consider a neutral oil
Oh,
because it comes from avocados, and avocados are fucking disgusting, and I can taste them on an avocado seared or an avocado covered searing surface.
hmm.
I
All right,
can't
I
I
will keep
can't
that
taste
in
olive
mind.
oil after it's been polymerized.
Hmm. And yeah, I generally share your disdain for avocados. I just needed something that could sear my steak fast enough.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like going through the process of um clarifying butter, so that would probably taste pretty good.
So, uh, right here we have an artisan steel pizza steel.
Mhm.
Let me correct this real quick. Okay, so you've got an artisan steel, high performance pizza steel made in the USA. It's 16 inches by 14 and a quarter, and it's a quarter-inch thick. This is high quality steel, but it's also $90 for
Yeah.
a steel like this. I'd expect to pay at least 160, maybe 170,
Hmm.
which means it is also going to come with machine oil on it, which means you will still need to do your normal stuff with it.
Right.
But it is high quality.
I might have to
I
get that
Yeah.
because seems like a reasonably good quality deal.
um and that pizza looks beautiful.
Hmm.
I'm guessing the heating element in your oven is at the bottom.
Um, I think it's at the bottom and the top. Actually, no, it's just at the bottom.
Okay. So for my pizza recipes that I'm going to send you,
Hmm.
your pizza steel or this baking steel needs to
Hmm.
be close to the bottom rack, and
All
your
right.
oven needs to be set at about 225 degrees Celsius,
Hmm.
maybe around 240. And you can bake any pizza on it, whether it's pan pizza, New York style pizza, tavern style, doesn't matter. And my pizza dough is transitive. It can be used in any pizza recipe that you use, whether it be New York style, uh, things like that. It works for all of them.
That does sound good.
But if you try to make a New York style pizza, do not get upset when you don't get it the first time. It is a pain to learn how to stretch dough the way they do in New York.
Hmm. But yeah, that will be definitely interesting. And you said you were gonna send me the recipe for the pizza dough. What was the other thing you were gonna send
The
for?
bread rolls, the
Ah,
sandwich
yes.
rolls.
Right.
Now, the recipe for the dough for sandwich rolls, it's the
Hmm.
same for pretty much any bread that I would bake for anything. So rolls, buns, um it has a similar recipe to a loaf of bread that I'd make, but it's not exactly the same.
All right. Oh, one last thing. Could you also at some point send me a recipe for brioche buns?
I would recommend not learning how to do brioche uh
All right.
for a while. Um so brioche buns are high fat buns.
Mm-hmm.
Um Anything over 10% is considered high fat, and
Mm-hmm.
you can basically use a 50% fat to flour ratio in brioche. And when you do brioche, it's the same as or doing fat. It's the same thing as adding water. It becomes extremely sticky. But
Mm-hmm.
the difference between the two is uh the stickier a water dough, or the wetter the water dough, the more air pockets you create. The wetter a brioche dough or a high fat dough, um, the fewer the air pockets you create. And it makes it much more difficult to work with because you can't actually make a consistent gluten network the same way that you can if you have water, because fats actually coat gluten particles and keep them from forming bonds together.
And what is the purpose of having a gluten network?
It's it's to make um so think about cakes.
Mm-hmm.
Cakes are high fat,
Yeah.
but they use the same ingredients: oil, water, flour, sugar. The difference is in the proportions. With the gluten network, you're actually forming a bread
Mhm.
and you're forming a crust, and it it holds itself together because the gluten has formed and connected. Think of a matrix of particles just connecting.
Mhm.
That's the gluten network. If you disrupt that with fat, these objects can no longer hold on to each other. These particles no longer hold on, and so they become more fluffy and more
Mhm.
rich, but they also fall apart faster
Oh.
because they're not holding on to everything else that's connected to everything else. There will be uh, small portions of the dough that is in fact connected with gluten networks, but those will be more disconnected from other gluten networks than they are to be connected. Uh, Brioche is what's called a not just high fat, but a highly enriched dough because
Right.
you're adding a lot of other things.
Hmm.
If
What
you're
can
going if you're gonna do brioche, get the basics down first.
All right. What tends to be the fat they use for those?
You honestly, you can do anything. I say stay away from eggs for the most part.
Mhm.
Uh, I use butter
That's always
for
good.
mostly butter. I also use olive oil in some of my doughs.
Mhm.
Let's see.
Why
I'll,
would you
I'll,
recommend avoiding eggs?
um, Eggs are normally used in brioche. Eggs are normally used in cake doughs. They are
Mhm.
extremely high fat, and you're going to have a little bit of a harder time figuring out the ratio to use eggs in a actual bread dough.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas things like oil and butter, you can control the consistency. You can't really control the weight of the fat that's in an egg. They come in different proportions. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
with oil, you can just measure out how much you need. With butter, you
Right.
can just measure out how much you need.
Yeah.
Even with milk, you can measure out how much you need.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so people even use milk as well.
Yes. Uh, I am partial to heavy cream. Um, heavy cream will bring a softer side to bread dough, and
Mm-hmm.
that's one of my recipes that I'm going to send you,
All right.
because uh it does have a lot of fat in it, but again, you can measure it out, and it will, once you figure out how to work with um lower hydration with slightly higher fat content, it
Mm-hmm.
won't it still won't be sticky, but it will give you that softer crumb that most
Mm-hmm.
people look for in a brioche. I generally do
Okay.
about 65%.
I see. And what would you recommend, say, for example, if I was trying to create something with a very hard crust to it, like say for a baguette?
Um,
Is that just a temperature thing, or
that's a steam and temperature thing. So you're talking about the crackly crust.
yes?
Uh, that is the process of creating bread in the Dutch oven. So like I was on the sourdough before we went on this tangent. You
Mm-hmm.
stick it in the Dutch oven, and what it does is it steams the bread and it keeps it from forming that crust for as long as possible. And then you pull off the lid and you let it finish baking. And what happens is that dough has released all of its steam, and it's created pockets while it's been baking, and while it's been baking it hasn't been forming a crust the entire time, which means instead of a soft and thick crust, what you're going to create after the steaming and the release of steam, once you pull off the top, it's going to very quickly form a crust, and it's going to be very thin. It's going to be bubbly, and it's going to be crackly once it's cooled down.
Very nice.
If you only cook in direct heat, you're going to have a soft crust and it's not going to be crackly. If you bake with steam to stave off the creation of the crust as long as possible, that immediate heat shock is going to create that crackly crust.
Very good to know.
That's why when you create a New York style pizza
Mhm.
and you throw it on the pizza steel, and the pizza steel is right at the bottom, right where all of the heat is concentrated, and you throw it on there, and 5 minutes later you pull it, or 5 or 10 minutes later you pull it out, and the crust is like solid, almost solid. It's from all of the heat shock, even though the crust is thin as all get out.
I'm going to definitely have to try it.
Let's see. I need to cast iron casserole dish with lid. This is what I use that doubles as a Dutch oven. This is what I use for my bread rolls. It can be used in the oven. It can be used at the top can be used as a griddle on the stove. It just having a 2-in-1 can do plenty of things, and it's $60.
Also not bad.
If you're going to use it as a Dutch oven, I recommend never using it for anything else. Because even if you season it, it will eventually rust because you're pushing out a lot of that oil with the steaming that you're doing. Water hates metal and oil hates water.
Good to know.
So if you're gonna use it for anything other than bread, buy 2 of them.
All right. Yeah, that seems of a reasonable length where I could potentially make a small baguette.
Oh yes. I'll take pictures and I'll send them to you. I also,
All right.
if you're gonna do prep, it depends on what you want to do, what's going to be easier for you. You can make all of the rolls all at once, or you can make the dough and make one roll each day. But if you make all of the rolls at once, anything that you're not going to use that same day needs to go in the freezer. Otherwise, it's going to dry out and mold before the week is over.
I guess that was going to be my my next question is roughly how long do these breads you bake last before they mold?
Most breads that I make are only going to last a week tops because I put sugar in them to help the proofing process and also to help the color of the crust come in, because you apply heat to sugar and processed sugar turns brown.
Caramelizes. Yeah. Yeah. So generally what if anything do you tend to like cover it in after you've made it?
Nothing.
Oh, so you just like so you can safely just leave it out like in the open?
Oh, you're so you're not talking like adding stuff onto the bread. You're talking
Oh,
about
no.
packaging.
Yeah. Like how do you tend to package?
So I put it on a cooling rack for anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, and I prefer it closer to the 30 minutes because it's still warm and it's still releasing some of the heat, so it can soften up the crust a little bit. Once it's to that point, I'll put it in a Ziploc bag, and then once it's fully cooled, I'll stick it in the freezer.
Wow. And I assume it lasts like basically forever while it's in the freezer, correct?
Yes, mold doesn't work well in the cold. But if you're gonna put it in the freezer and you're gonna pull it out the day of, it needs to be done an hour before. And even then, you may still have to steam it in order to thaw the bread enough use for whatever you're going to do with it.
Right. Also, it seems Molly has now joined us. Hello,
Yeah,
Molly.
oh, I forgot, but I'm working as well at the same time.
It's okay. We're only about 6 minutes out from ending this.
Oh,
All right. Well, at least you managed to join us for the end. It is nice to see you, as always.
yeah.
Um.
Mhm.
So we've got that. I showed you pizza steels. Now there's
Yeah.
other, Dutch oven type implements, but you've already got a Dutch oven. I'm guessing it's
Yeah.
something more like this.
Actually, it's another one of those two-in-one things. So as the top can be used as a cast iron skillet, similar to that casserole thing you had.
Like
Yeah,
this.
it's kind of like that. It's not that, but it's kind of like that.
This is the one that I have. This is the
Oh,
Dutch oven that I have. It's
very
nice
nice.
and it's good for batard, sourdough.
What is a
Um,
Dutch oven?
so a Dutch oven
That.
Is when your spouse holds a blanket over you and then releases one hell of a bullfrog fart so that you get nothing but gassed out.
same idea,
Nice.
same idea. So you're covering something up and you're trapping you're trapping steam in it. And Dutch ovens are great at trapping steam and making it so that a crust on bread doesn't form.
Interesting.
When you want
That's so it's like
artisan loaves of sourdough, you want a crispy crust, and you only get that if you steam it.
A Dutch oven is another method of cooking, to put it in general term.
Oh, you've
Uh,
also been doing a fair amount of baking of bread recently, haven't you, Molly?
yeah, but that was Nova for the most part. I don't know how to develop the bread and shit.
Oh,
I can
I
teach you.
didn't research the technology.
I can teach you. I'm
Yes.
guessing you have baker's yeast.
Bold of you to assume
It's
that.
some sort of yeast. I don't know what it is. We have one which is dry yeast,
Okay.
you have some sketchy Serbian yeast.
or rather powdered, not dry.
Yeah, that's dry yeast.
Yes.
Is normal yeast wet?
No, it's just like a cube though.
Actually, fresh yeast can be
Mhm.
wet. It can be dry. It can be a solid brick.
Hmm. Are there
It
any benefits or downsides to either using normal yeast or dry yeast? Other forms of yeast?
I guess dry
if
is easier to store because it survives for longer.
dry yeast is the most survivable of
Mhm.
all of the yeast cultures, but if you want sourdough, you need to culture your own yeast.
Mm.
And I would like to transition all of my doughs from baker's yeast or dry yeast to a full sourdough recipe. That means
Mm.
the pizza dough, the bread rolls, everything will eventually be sourdough. The the difficult part about that is sourdough yeast takes a lot longer to proof than baker's yeast.
Huh.
We're
And
talking at least 12 to 24 times as long.
yeah. So roughly how long would you say that is?
So a loaf of sourdough can take anywhere from a day to 2 days to create,
Yeah.
whereas a loaf made with baker's yeast might take 4 hours tops.
Right. And
Uh,
what exactly is proofing? You said it takes a lot longer to proof.
so you've got different stages of the development of the dough. Your
Mhm.
first stage is the mix. Your second
Right.
stage is the bulk rise, where
Mhm.
you're trying to get the culture of yeast to fully get to get everywhere in the dough and start consuming the starches and the sugars and creating
Mhm.
gases. And then you have the proofing stage. Now the proofing stage is uh you knocking out a lot of the excess gas and then
Mm.
allowing it to finish its gassing air the stage where it's gassing the bread or the dough. It's also
Mm.
the stage where you shape the dough.
Mhm.
So for sourdough during the proofing stage, what you do is you've finished the bulk rise, you're going to separate the dough out into their respective dough balls, and then you're going to shape them into the loaf that you're going to make. And
Mm.
again, you've got batards, you've got boules. If you're going to use a batard shape, you have a batard basket with a liner, and
Mhm.
you shape the dough into the general batard shape. You line the liner with rice flour or something to keep the dough from sticking to it, and then you drop the dough topside down into the basket, and then you cover it and you put it in the fridge.
Mm.
And during the proofing stage of this, not only is the yeast working, but there's also a bacteria strain creating lactic acid that's eating away at the gluten network that you've created. But you've slowed down the bacteria.
Mhm.
So during that time, you want a proper balance between the yeast and the bacteria where it's creating gases and the lactic acid is eating away at the gluten network, and eventually after that you pull it out after you've already heated up the oven and the Dutch oven. You pull it out, you stick it on a piece of parchment paper. You
Mhm.
throw a couple of ice cubes in the Dutch oven. You drop the you score the 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 loaf of bread, drop it in the Dutch oven, cover it up, stick it in for 30 minutes. And what you
Mhm.
should see is the gluten network that you developed during the bulk rise and the shaping before you did the proof. It's going to
Mhm.
force the gases to come up out of the score that you've created at the top of the dough,
Mhm.
and it should just rise pretty much straight up and create that nice round batard.
Mm.
And then after 30 minutes you pull off the top. The crust gets that heat shock. After 25 minutes you pull it out, stick it on a cooling rack, and you've got sourdough.
Mm.
Z
Oh
is
fuck.
building a house out of pallets with her dad.
Yes, she is.
Yeah. Sounds fun.
Yeah, it works for
Huh.
nice. Also, Cordon, I have a call.
Mm.
Someone has a call? What?
I believe Molly said she was kind of at work
Oh,
while
okay.
on this call, but she works from home, so I guess she just had to go answer something.
Well, I think the bread discussion has done us in. It's taken up
Indeed.
enough of our time. Um, but I just wanted to say that I'm proud of you. I'm guessing there's been very little to no alcohol since we had our
That
discussion. Yes.
that is correct.
Okay. No adverse side effects since. Yes.
Nope, nope. I
Okay.
seem to be surprisingly extremely uh resistant to alcohol withdrawal, which is a very good thing.
Yes. Yes, it is. And building a solid habit at the same time that you're dropping a bad
Oh yeah, I'm back.
habit is a good thing.
Sure.
So, we're gonna we're gonna keep working on these good habits over the months. In 2 weeks, we're gonna have that next checkup, that next financial audit,
All right.
and we'll see where you are. With that said, Coda is outside, so she's already said goodbye to everyone.
Oh.
Just assume it.
Oh, is she like going on the train tracks? She's like, goodbye world, I'm
No,
gone.
she's taking Ruby outside.
Aw.
Uh, and so I would like to introduce and say goodbye to Mali, our former Soviet bloc resident Serbian. Say
Yes, hello,
goodbye.
goodbye. Bye bye.
And we are also going to say goodnight to Dael, our resident Soviet Kanakistani. Say goodbye, Dael.
Goodbye, everyone. See you next time. Au revoir.
That is
And
Commissar Dale.
and you suck, right? Okay.
That I always say after. You can't let the people know that I think they suck.
Okay. Well, you already did. So, with that being said, we will see you all later, and I believe next week we should have a lot more stuff to talk about. Until then, have a good week. Bye.